welcome to BoardGameCast episode 6. My name is Jesper Edmark, also known as Mordachai on BoardGameGeek, and I am the host of this show in which I show you full sessions of board games. In this episode I will show you a 5-man game of Glenn Drover's Empires: The Age of Discovery, also known as Age of Empires 3: The Age of Discovery, and I will be calling it by Age of Empires for short. Throughout this video, I guess it was an issue with license or something. Either way, this is from 2007, this game. The session was from a couple of weeks ago, but it is a worker placement game where you try to balance getting the buildings that give points and sending your colonists to the new world to get points, as well as making discoveries. And it has one big random element in the discovery that, as I have said before, I'm not particularly fond of, but it can be mitigated by simply sending enough colonists on the discovery to make sure that you are guaranteed to succeed with a discovery. But I will come back to that later. This game was played at DMF in Lund, and the information about that gaming society will be below the video as usual. You see us setting up here, and the 5 players in this session will be from the left going over the top and then to the right. Christian on the left side, then Daniel, Hampus, Victor, and then me. So it's a 5-man game, first 5-man game I have done here, and it is a bit tight in the space. I want to apologize at the start that from time to time some of the buildings and cards will not actually be shown on the video, and that is something I unfortunately found out after the session was done, so there was not much I could do about that. I want to point out that this game will be played with a house rule. The 1 coin per position after the first is by no means enough of a compensation for going later in the turn, we feel. And with newer players, the auctioning variant described in the rules is really no alternative. So to even out the field, each player gains 2 victory points per position after the first, as well as that coin, which doesn't have an in-game impact, but has an impact on the placement in the end, or can have. It's still very strong benefit of going first. You have an advantage there, so it's something to even the playing field, but might actually not be enough. So at the start of this game we see that there will be a quite big rush towards the buildings, and the buildings are very potent in this game. I would also like to point out that I have cut heavily into this material. I've cut out 1 hour and 3 minutes out of the 1 hour and 47 minutes long game. So that is quite heavily cut, and I hope that is something you can live with. But back to the buildings. The buildings are really potent, and getting money for the buildings is one of the tasks that the players are facing. You cannot fall behind in buildings if you plan to win the game. Even if you get a lot of points in the new world, if you are behind in buildings and victory points from buildings, you seldomly win the game. That said, there are a few different strategies in the game. One is going for building and ship and trading goods. One is for getting as many colonies out into the 3 new world as possible. But all in all, you really want a balanced strategy. Income can be gained 4 ways in this game, and that is through the initiative track, which is an interesting aspect of the initiative, because if you decide to go first the next turn, you only gain 1 coin, but if you go later initiative order for the next turn, you gain more money, and that can be one way to afford those buildings, since you get the money from the initiative track before you buy buildings. Another way to gain money is from sending merchants out into the new world, and that gives you 5 coins, and it's the main use of merchants. You can also put them on the merchant shipping spot to compete for the merchant ship, but at the early game, merchants are always sent to the new world in my experience, because it's such an income boost early. The third way is the discoveries. When you successfully send an discovery, an expedition to the new world, you get some money. And the last way is the trading good income at the end of the turn. I would like to point out that you can boost your income from the discoveries by sending soldiers. So that is one use of the soldiers. The specialists are really important in this game, and also is one of the reasons why the buildings are so potent, because several of the buildings give you specialists, and the buildings are by no means equal in value. I mean, if you get a merchant each turn, or if you get a settler each turn, that is a huge difference. So you really want to have the initiative for the building's sake if you have the money to build, and that is the reason why at turn 1 going first is such a huge advantage. What you saw here the first turn was that we scrambled for buildings, and then we scrambled for the specialists, some trade goods, and then the rest was put on the migration dock and the discovery box. It's something that is quite interesting, is because early game you're not really interested in shipping that many people out into the new world, because you won't be able to choose where to send them. You can only send to discovered areas. But later in the game, the shipping dock the migration dock is just filling up really rapidly, especially when people start getting the specialists that have their main benefit out in the new world, and that would be the missionaries and the soldiers. Those are mainly sent to the new world for good effect. We have the second turn here, and as you can see, Christian has decided to build 2 buildings this turn, and he has the money for that since he purchased the Inca treasure building first turn, which basically gives him 20 coin for 10. So that means he can build 2 buildings instead of 1 or in fact 3 buildings, since the Inca treasure one is also considered a building. But you get the benefit of 2 buildings for the cost of 1, but you do it at opportunity cost, because the buildings, the really good buildings, will be gone the first turn, so you need to balance it out the second turn to get good value out of that purchase. On the other hand, if you are fewer than 5 players, the Inca Treasure is almost broken, because you can build your second building the first turn, and then you can build the third building the second turn, early in the second turn, and you usually get 2 very good buildings out of the Inca Treasure money. So this also something that we tend to house rule, is that the Inca Treasure cannot be available the first turn. As you see, Hampus is the first player who take trade goods from the New World, and Missionary is really potent for claiming trade goods, especially early in the game. But you can also set up for taking those trade goods if you have missionaries. Hampus really took advantage of the reluctance of all the other players to rush for New World trade goods. This might be because Daniel and Victor are quite new to the game, and they did not spend too many actions on trying to take the New World trade goods. They spent some actions to get the majority in the different areas, but they didn't rush the migration dock that often, just with the purpose of taking the trade goods. And Hampus really took advantage of that, and it's bad play on mine and Christian's part not to see that happen and try to stop him, because he got a lot of trade goods from just sending a lot of colonists out into the New World, and he also get a lot of points for it in the age transitions. Now, while getting extra colonists out into the New World via the X and Y spot on the migration dock are really strong, the bad part of it is that you do not gain an extra action. And in my position, I had to choose between getting a settler and taking the migration laws that, or conscription that gives you the Y spot. And I decided to go for the extra action because I only had 5. That is because the first building I took gave me an extra captain, but it was locked to the discovery box each turn. So that is something to think about. The amount of figures you have at hand is also the amount of actions you will have. So in turn 3 here you see that Daniel, the red player, has a lot of actions available, while the rest of us really do not have as many, and that gives him a huge advantage in the terms of being able to react to other players and force other players to maybe commit extra actions to some spots where they normally shouldn't have to do that. What also happens here is that Daniel was sleeping a bit, and he was not paying attention that it was his turn for some time. You can't see that because I cut that out, but it brought out some changes. I was initially going for the tobacco in Virginia, but I had to go for the trade good one instead, and hoping I would get that one, because that would definitely be stolen by Daniel if he decided to put one more colonist on the dock. And I assume that he would, because that would be the correct play. Now, Daniel and Victor gave the discovery box too much attention though. Several times over the course of the game they forwent spots that are limited. For instance, the colonist dock or the buildings at sometimes, I think. The merchant shipping, which isn't limited per se, but it's something that you can test trade good. in favor of putting on the discovery box early, and I strongly recommend you don't do that. On some occasions you want to wait with initiative to get an extra income boost, for instance, but a trade good or the merchant ship is so much more valuable than another colonist in discovery box most of the time. So I recommend that you do the other actions before you start putting actions into the discovery box. In this case, for instance, Daniel ended up not taking the trade good in Virginia, so I would have gotten it, but I couldn't. I couldn't assume that he would miss out on it, so that's why I changed my play. But the lesson to learn is that sometimes it's wrong to assume that your opponents will be playing optimally, especially when new players are present in the game at the table. So that is something that you can take away from this. I went with Gambit here, trying to get 5 extra money so I could build that building. I really wanted it, since I went for discovery strategy here. And the Conquistador gives you a soldier in the discovery box each turn, and having both the Navigator and the Conquistador can give you a lot of money and a lot of points throughout the game. But I ended up not getting it because I only got the 3rd spot in the turn order track, initiative track, so I only got 3 money. So the Conquistador went to Daniel instead, and that is something I was sad about, but I knew it was a gambit, and in retrospect it was quite a bad gambit considering the amount of actions Daniel had his disposal, as well as me only having 6 actions here. It's I had a bad turn order for this occasion. I was early in the round and I only had 6 actions, so my possibility to get late initiative placement in the upcoming turn was quite slim, but it was a gambit. It's turn 3. People generally want to have high initiative for turn 4 when the new buildings come out, so I took the gambit, and it was the bad choice here, but I knew that might happen. Spending an action on the initiative track when you won't gain position if the other 4 players have placed the actions on spots 1 to 4 on the initiative track, and only the 5th place is left, it might seem counterproductive, but remember that you gain more money, and if you spend 1 action to gain 5 coins, that is quite a lot of money for 1 action, especially if it's late in the turn and your only other choice is discovery, and that is a really good choice most of the time. And as you can see here, where age 1 comes to an end, Hampus and Victor both made a lot of points, and Hampus did a little better, considering that Victor already had some points to start with. And this actually will continue throughout the game. Hampus will spend a lot of actions to get out colonists into the new world, and he is of course helped by his extra missionary he gets each turn. That is one very potent building as well. And I end up going a strategy that do not focus on new world. I try to go a discovery route instead, and that is the price to pay for going heavily into discoveries is that you have to forego sending a lot of colonists into the new world. That is something to think about when you choose a strategy. Getting a lot of colonists into the new world yields a lot of points, but you can get quite a lot of points from discoveries as well if you push enough resources into that action. So that is something to think about as well. Buildings wise, the two most important turns of the game are the 4th turn and the 7th turn, because then the new buildings of the new age have been made available, and the power of the buildings are getting higher throughout the game. The Age 2 buildings are, generally speaking, more powerful than the Age 1 buildings, and the Age 3 buildings are, generally speaking, more powerful than the Age 2 buildings. So being the first one to be able to choose among the buildings of the new age is usually very beneficial. For that reason, I was actually glad that I had gotten a better turn order for this turn, instead of getting those 5 coins and being able to buy the Conquistador. But I saw that something bad was about to happen here. The rum distillery gives a player with sugar a lot of extra income, and a player that has a lot of income and a good supply of colonists out to the new world has a really strong position in the game. And Hampus in this case already had 2 sugar, and I was not interested in the rum distillery. It didn't look like I was getting any sugar anytime soon. Neither of the other players was interested in it. So for that reason, I knew that most likely Hampus will get that rum distillery, and I, going for that money and discovery trade good route I did, I needed some kind of income. And the privateers is not only an offensive move, it's also a defensive one, because you are the one that takes money from the other players instead of one other player taking money from you. So I had my eye on the privateers here. Now Christian goes first, and he goes with heavy influence out into the new world, with taking the Y spot building as well as the X spot building that he took earlier. I know I said that wrong earlier, but he now has 2 extra colonists, and they are placed at last, so he has a good chance of getting control over areas into the new world. So that is really good for him. And I took the privateers. I need the money anyway. And we ended up giving the rum distillery to Hampus here, and that was unfortunate, but it had to be done, really. And him taking a 3rd sugar meant that he just leaped in income. That's 9 extra coin every income turn, so that is he's got a lot of money from here on out, and that it looked very bleak at this point in time. Now, something that is noteworthy here is that Christian has really no income at all. Victor has very little income, as well as Daniel. Now, Daniel chose to take the furs instead of the sugar. He could have taken away some of the possibilities there from Hampus, but he chose to go for the furs, and that was to get income of his own instead, because it looks like he will get the fur in Canada. So that is something that is really good for him. I still would have hoped that someone would have stabbed Hampus from the sugar there, but I can't really blame them from going other routes. With the fourth sugar coming up the turn after, Hampus really gets boosted income. He's also the first one places on the trade good track, so we know that he will have a lot of money, and there's nothing we can stop him from getting that money. And when one player gets into a position where they look like they will have a lot of money and a lot of colonists in the New World, the other players really should start thinking about taking that player down as much as they can. Now, there aren't that much player interaction in the New World as you might think. Yes, you can put out your colonists in a way that takes away control from another player or takes away points from another player, but the only sort of action or figure that really has an impact in the New World are the soldier, and there are not many soldiers in the game. And when some of them are, or quite many of them, are put in the discovery box, as it were, in this session, the impact of the soldiers in the New World are even less than that. So that was something that might have changed the game a bit if there had been more soldiers in the New World to start picking off Hampus's forces here, because he has got so many points for the different areas in the age transitions. Now, something that is quite interesting here is that I believe this is the first time someone in the game takes the train specialist spot, the specialist track, the one where you can train one specialist of your choice for 5 coin. And that is an often undervalued spot if you have the money. That spot gives you extra actions next turn. That is something that can give you quite an edge. I took it here because I really need to go for the ships now that I have privateers, so I'm going for extra power, either a captain or a merchant here, to be able to influence that merchant ship. And that is something that really makes it possible for me to bully the other players around the upcoming turn. With an extra captain and an extra merchant, you really have a good position to take that merchant ship, and I was forced to take those merchant ships to be able to have a winning chance here. Now, unfortunately, what ends up happening is that Hampus gets the cathedral, and that means that his missionaries grant an extra colonist when they reach the New World. And that means that not only does he have a really good income each turn, so he will not be money starved for the rest of the game, he's also pumping out colonists into the New World at an outstanding pace. Just for 2 actions in the upcoming round, he gets 6 colonists out into the New World, and it's hard to match that if you're not having soldiers. And with that in mind, what I say now might sound a little strange, and it might be that I underestimate the Indian allies building, which gives you 2 soldiers out into the New World in an area where you already have colonists, but I feel that there are better choices to make than Indian allies almost all of the time. If you are building late, there are only 1 or 2 buildings left, usually can be a good choice, but if you are building early, Indian allies is usually not the strongest building out there. But that is my opinion, and I don't know, maybe I'm simply wrong here, but I felt that Daniel misplayed taking Indian allies when he did. Now, as you see us getting into the round before scoring here, this is scoring wise one of the most important turns. We have turn 3, 6 and 8 are the most important ones if you think about scoring, because those are the rounds where you really can change the balance in the New World. And that is one of the reasons why the colonist dock end up getting filled really rapidly these turns especially. And the fact that the colonist dock are quite limited in the amount of spaces means that you're really hard pressed to get your people on there before it's filled up. The diplomacy part here was me more or less threatening to force Victor to spend all his available actions to still not get the merchant ship. I said that if he starts placing the merchant ship, I will follow, and I have more weight on that ship. I had an extra captain, I had an extra merchant, so I would win it. It would have taken all our actions, but he would have spent them for nothing, while I would have taken the ship in the end. And I was willing to spend all those actions. I already had placed on the initiative track, while Victor had not, so he would have lost out quite a lot if he would have gone for it. So that is the diplomacy part of this, and I feel that diplomacy is part of this game. If you're playing in absolute silence, it's not that good of a game. You need to be able to negotiate with other players, and that goes for many other games as well. And I know that some people don't like that aspect, but I feel that it's an important aspect of most games. So I end up taking the ship here. One thing about placing on warfare, because this is the first turn where warfare had been used, is that you can, if you have soldiers into the New World or about to get into the New World, placing on the warfare track is one way of saying to the other players that you don't want to contest my areas because I am going to kill off your dudes. And Christian uses it here, and that is something that is quite important when you have soldiers. The reason you really want to have soldiers out in the New World, to be able to spend an action on the warfare track and just tell the other players that if you contest my areas, I'm gonna start shooting your dudes off, and that is usually very efficient. And I had no soldiers, and it didn't look like I was getting any, so it was nothing that I could utilize myself, but Christian could, and Victor could, and in the end Daniel can as well. So it's at the end of the game, it's quite powerful action most of the time. While going early on the colonist track let you get more colonists out into the new world. Going late gives you a position where you can control the outcome of the different areas, and that is why the X and Y spots are so good, because Christian here can look around the board and see if there's any openings, and then just place the colonies where they have the most benefit to him. So that is something that is really good about those buildings, to be able to control the field. Now when we get to the buildings, Christian takes the university, and it's probably best building in the game. It gives 5 victory points, but it also gives you the ability to move to the front of one of the tracks one time use, and you can use that to get first in a turn order for one turn. It's really powerful, especially going into the 8th turn. That is really powerful. Now I wanted a soldier, but I was too slow in putting my action into the building track, so I actually end up passing here, not using that action, while Hampus gets 2 buildings here. He has so much money that that was no problem for him, and he gains even more income with a taxation building, so that is quite a good investment for him. Now that all the regular spots have been discovered, we go to the cards. The cards are a little harder to successfully discover, and they give a little less of a reward, with a couple of exceptions. But I coming back to the random element here, one thing of this randomness is that if I send out a full complement of colonists and say a couple of soldiers, and I draw something like the card I drew here, which gives you 1 coin plus 2 for every soldier, I will get 5 coins. If I, on the other hand, manage to hit one of the higher end cards, I will get 13 coins for that, if I have a couple of soldiers with it. And even if I do not have soldiers, I will still gain more money than I for that card, that I drew. So going for the discovery strategy is risky business, because if you continue to draw bad discoveries, even if you succeed with all of them, and even if you have soldiers, which I unfortunately did not have, you can end up getting stuck with really low yields for the actions, while if you have luck with a draw, you can gain a lot of points and a lot of money just by drawing the right card. And that is one thing that I don't like particularly much, and still I played the discovery game this session, so that was an interesting deviation from what I usually do. Now, second age scoring, and as you will see, we will have a little bit of scoring for all people, but the one going up in front here is Hampus. He is gaining a lot of points. He has the majority in 3 areas, and he has second place in 2 others. So it's he gains such a huge amount of victory points here. I would say that although he's second in the Caribbean, he actually doesn't gain any points for it, since that is a split second place. So he gains 20 points here, and that is twice the amount that I get, for instance. And the only other player that is even close to that in this round is Christian. So, and that is something that is really beneficial for Hampus. He's raking in the points for the new world, and if that was all the points he was getting, if it would have stopped there, him only getting points for new world, then that wouldn't have been enough. It's never enough if you only get points from one spot or one victory point strategy track, if you so please. But he's also getting for trade goods, and he also is getting it for the buildings. So he's getting a lot of points all over the place. And my thinking here is that, well, he's not getting any from the discoveries, but it actually turns out that he draws a couple of good discoveries later that give him a good amount of points in that aspect as well. So he played a very good game all around this session. Now the next to last turn of the game, and the first turn where we can build the high-end buildings here. And while I said earlier that generally speaking the H3 buildings are much better than the H2 buildings, there are a couple of exceptions to this. On the other hand, I would just like to point out here that the diplomacy on my part here is somewhat different to the earlier time I used diplomacy to gain the merchant ship. This time I would actually lose out on the ship if Donald decided to contest it. But I simply said that if you go for the merchant ship, I will make sure you spend every action you have on the merchant ship. Because I had 2 merchants left, and I would spend both of them on the merchant ship and force out all his actions. He only had settlers on the ship. So I knew that I would lose it if he contested it. I also knew that I would spend all my actions. I had used what I wanted to use for the rest of the actions. The only other spot that was available to me was the discovery box, and I can opt out from one discovery if it means that the other players see that I will stand by my word and spend all my actions to get the merchant ship, or even not to get the merchant ship if I say that I will. And that's a credibility question or issue there. If I say that I'm gonna force you to spend all the actions you have to get a merchant ship, and then I do not follow through, they will not listen to me next time. So that is a meta game issue, carrying over from game to game. And there's always a meta game issue. Unless you play with completely new people every time you play a game, there will always be a meta game going on. That is something to note as well, that if you play with the same people several times, the metagame can decide games. It's that simple. And by buying yourself credibility in one game can give you an advantage in another game. But it's besides the point. What is happening here is that we are scrambling for the new world, and also we are doing the discoveries. For the last turn, what I was surprised to see was that only me and Christian went for the specialists. Especially Hampus, he had the money and he had actions. He could have spent one action to take the trained specialist spot and gain an effect from that. Now I managed to complete my strategy by getting the navy, building. Christian got the Prosperity, the building where you get points for every building you have. And Hampus gets the building that gives you victory points for every trade good you have. As you see here, I get the best, in my opinion, discovery card in the game here. I mean, I got the maximum amount of points I could have gotten, as well as 8 coins without soldiers. So it's something that can really change games when you get those good discoveries. While if you follow the graphics here, you have seen that while Daniel has done several discoveries, they have all been low yielding, and he has also sent a lot of soldiers out into discoveries that has only given a few coins each, so that's quite a difference. At this point in time, well, Hampus has 36 income. That is almost enough for 2 H3 buildings. That is insane. And that is thanks to him getting 5 sugar combined with the rum distillery. And that's more or less a mistake on our parts. We should have blocked those sugar as soon as it became apparent that he would get the rum distillery. Sure, he has taxation, so in the end he might not have needed the rum distillery combined with 5 sugar to get the income he needed, but still it's such a huge income boost, and that's something you want to look out for. If it looks like someone will get too much sugar combined with a rum distillery, you might want to block him if you can. Now, the last turn of the game, and getting people out into the new world is quite important. And also the specialist track is void. You cannot gain any benefit from it. You also cannot gain any benefit from the initiative track unless you are 1 or maybe 2, if you're lucky, coins short for an H3 building. But in the end, it's something that means that there are fewer spots that are really contested in the last turn of the game. And that means that another issue comes into play here. At times it can be worthwhile to put one of your dudes on an action space that you do not intend to or cannot use. For instance, the warfare track. I decided to block the warfare track because I don't want to be shot off in the new world. And I do so fully aware that I will not be able to use that for anything. I do not have any soldiers. But by doing so, there will be less warfare in the new world. Now, in retrospect, that might have been a mistake. They would probably have shot at other people than me, but I did not want to risk it. So that is something that I might have erred there, but then again, I do not want people to shooting me out from the different areas, so I decided to block it. And when I go for that blocking move, the other players should have realized that, oh, he's blocking it, we probably should take that action as well, but neither Daniel or Victor ended up doing that. So we start resolving it here, and unfortunately for me, it's quite obvious that I will get very few points here in the end for the new world. I will get the second place here and there, but not putting out enough colonists into new world means that Christian especially will be able to steal quite a few points from me here. And that is quite sad. At the same time, Hampus is still bringing out those missionaries and gaining a lot of colonists into the New World, and that is something that that really gives him a high yield, high reward. And if I had not blocked the warfare spots, maybe, just maybe, Daniel would have been able to take first place in Canada, for instance. And maybe he could have done something in New Granada. I don't know, but that's something you can ponder of later. Now, the diplomacy on Hampus' part here is that he's just friendly reminding Christian that he has the migration building lined up for himself. He knows that neither me nor Christian is interested in buying it. So he's just saying that if you put your dudes in that area, that will probably not give you anything. And since I will just use the migration card to full benefit there. So Christian just takes a first position in another area instead. So he steals an area from Daniel instead of Hampus. And that is thanks to Hampus' diplomacy. We take the last few trade goods and I get my 4th ship. It doesn't do anything especially, but it gives me 4 points with the navy. And it also gives me a few extra coins through privateering, which could end up giving me an extra victory point through the wealth building that I had picked up. And then Hampus ends up buying 2 buildings. And then we come to discoveries. And this is the only failed discovery in the game. Christian's expedition failed. He only had 3 dudes and he sent them into the discovery cards. So that's doomed to fail most of the time. I end up getting a low yield card at the end. While Hampus ends up with the card I really wanted here. I think he gains a lot of points and money, incidentally, but he cannot use the money for anything. Money is not worth anything at the end of the game, except for the person that has the wealth building. So that is something that is of note. So having a lot of money left over is usually an indication of either a huge income or just unoptimized play. The others gain some points too for the discoveries. And then we have warfare, and the only one being shot here in this turn is me, unfortunately, since I blocked the other spots. Again, retroactively I might have made a mistake by blocking those spots. Using migration, Hampus gains 4 points in the end, taking 2 second places he otherwise would not have gotten. And then we have the income, and of course this is void for all players except for me. But then we take the points for trade goods, and as you see, Hampus got 51 coins in income, but only 14 points for victory points, and that was because you do not count income you get from buildings in this victory point part. You only count what you get from trade goods and your joker ships, since they act as jokers for the trade goods. So that's why I only got 14 points there. And then we have for buildings, and as you see we have 3 people who get quite a lot of points for buildings, and that's Christian, me and Hampus. And Daniel ended up with getting no points for building at all here. As we go into the H3 New World scoring part, we see that Hampus is really dominating this. He's ending up getting 28 whopping victory points in the H3 scoring, and that is quite impressive. I have actually not seen anyone get that many points in the H3 scoring before, and I don't know if it was because he was left going uncontested in the areas, or if it was because I blocked the warfare spot. Maybe that would have mixed up a bit, but in the end he gets a lot of points, and he ends up scoring 60 points total for the new world scoring. And as you see, he wins by a 9-point margin here, and that's not a huge victory, but it's still quite good. Somewhere along the line we managed to give 2 of Hampus points to Victor on the scoring track, so they are actually ending up with the same amount of points. And that actually means that Victor won the tiebreaker anyway, so it did not change the placings that much. Also, in the end, either I have missed Christian spending or not getting 5 coins, or he forgot taking it somewhere over the course of the game, because according to my notes, when I have gone over the videos, he ends up with 5 coins more than he has here. That means that he could have spent one of his merchants somewhere else than on the colonist dock last turn, to be able to afford that building he purchased there. All in all, a nice game as usual, and I will give you a few comments from the players here on the screen, as you see. That is something that I started with the last video, and I plan to continue with it unless there's an outcry of dismay over it. So I hope that you enjoyed yourself. I think this is a quite good game, although the random element can end up deciding games from time to time. Other than that, I really hope to see you next time. The next video will be a bit shorter, but it will also contain a contest for you. So if you are interested in maybe winning a small $25-$30 game, then I suggest that you watch the next video. And until then, I bid you farewell. Bye bye.